Hello lovelies! It's been a while. It's been about one round of the flu, one trip to London, then another round of the flu, then a trip to Copenhagen, and then a trip to California. Since the last time I got to be in front of the camera like this with you guys. So I'm sorry it's taken so long, but here I am. Let's talk about some books that I've read over the last 2 months. So because I've been sick and I've been traveling quite a bit, I haven't read as much as I usually do, and I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks instead. But I'm gonna talk about them now, so let's jump into it. The first book that I read in the month of February was Lost Gods by Brom. Now, I loved Krampus and I loved The Child Thief by Brom, and this one was not a disappointment either. Lost Gods is a story about Chet Moran, who's just gotten out of jail. He makes a bad decision and ends up down in purgatory, where he has to fight his way through to try to save his wife and unborn child who is still alive. So Brom writes dark stories. This is not an exception, and that's the reason why I love his works. They're dark, they're different, and he makes very intricate details about the world that he builds and also his characters that we get to know so well. I loved this. It wasn't perfect. I found myself losing concentration a bit. I found some of the parts where he's in purgatory, where you meet all of these different characters all the time, a bit confusing, but other than that, I really loved this story, and I ended up giving it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have a non-fiction book, and that is Forbilde, which would be translated to Role Model by Sophie, Elise, Isachsen. Now, this is one of the biggest bloggers in Norway, and this book tells the story of how she got to where she is, and also how with her anxiety and mental health issues, she's coping with being famous and also the pressure she feels that she's under. Now, I've been fascinated, and I do appreciate Sophie and her outspokenness. She's very honest. She's very open about her life and her issues and everything. So this was a very interesting look into the progress and the road she's walked from being just no one and to fame, where everyone knows her name and her face. I did really appreciate the honest look into her life and her feelings. It kind of felt like reading someone else's diary, and I did really enjoy it, but it didn't grab me and give me all the feels. I ended up giving it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up is an audiobook, and that is Body Positive Power by Jayne Crabbe. Oh, I can't even express how much I love this book. I never knew that I had a relationship with diet culture until I read or listened to this book. I wish that I could afford to always have 2 or 3 copies of this book in my purse, so that every time I hear a girl talk about how she feels fat or how she needs to lose weight or diet or not eat the food that she wants, I would immediately give her that copy, because I think everyone should read this book. It is heartbreaking and wonderful at the same time, and it really gives you an insight into the industry that goes around plastic surgery and dieting and everything around a media-driven diet culture that is so unhealthy to us, and that leads to a lot of sad and unreversible outcomes. Highly, highly recommend. I ended up giving it 5 stars. Then I read another non-fiction book, and that is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. This one too, a book that everyone should read, in my opinion, that is. It tells the story about how Dolly has experienced dating and love and sex and drugs and alcohol and everything. And although her experiences are a bit out there, I could still relate to a lot of the feelings that she's felt throughout the years. It was a really wonderful book, and it also focuses heavily on friendship, which I find to be amazing to see, and tells the story about how our friendships are our real loves, which I think is so true. I ended up giving it 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next three are going to be audiobooks. The first one is The Girl That Loved Tom Gordon by Stephen King. This is a story about 9-year-old Trisha who gets lost in the woods, and she wanders around in this wood for days on days, getting sick, getting delusional, and she has these visions of her favorite Red Sox player, Tom Gordon, who kind of helps her out throughout this traumatizing experience where she's stuck in the woods trying to survive, while there's also something dark and scary lurking around, of course. It's a Stephen King novel. There's gotta be. I really enjoyed this story. Trisha was such a sweet and interesting character and a very young and independent woman. I really enjoyed it. It was short and sweet, and I thought it was quite different from a lot of other Stephen King novels that I've read. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't love it, so I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is a non-fiction audiobook, and that is The Demon Next Door by Bryan Burrough. This tells a story from the town of Temple, Texas, where Danny Corwin raped and mutilated 6 women, killed 3 of them, and how the writer uncovers that the town kind of chose to not see all of the warning signs that were there about Danny for a long time. I thought it was interesting, but for some reason it didn't grab me, and I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the narrator, maybe it was the way that they told the story. I'm not really sure. Interesting, not great. I ended up giving it 3 out of 5 stars. So I guess I'm very intrigued by serial killers nowadays. The next one is Evil Has a Name by Paul Holes. Paul Holes is a detective who found files from a cold case in his cabinet in his office that turned out later to be early works of the Golden State Killer. And it tells the story about how they investigate this up until the point where they actually catch him. And it's really interesting. I was totally hooked by this story, and it's just fascinating how this guy has been traveling around and doing all of these assaults and rapes and murders, not getting caught. And it's fascinating to see how much work and how much time and effort Paul Holes put into this case. And I believe, as they say in the book, that if it wasn't for Paul Holes, this case probably never would have been solved. Highly recommend this if you're a fan of true crime and you find serial killers to be fascinating and scaringly intriguing. I ended up giving it 5 out of 5 stars. Now, the last book that I read over the last 2 months is a classic. It is The Black Cloud by Fred Hoyle. It tells the story about a big black cloud that comes towards Earth and will block the sun. It tells the story about how they investigate this, how they try to find out the outcome, and what actually happens when this black cloud covers the sun and changes the temperatures on Earth. I don't usually do that well with classics, but horror classics and sci-fi classics sometimes we're good friends, and this is one of those times. I really enjoyed The Black Cloud. Some of the sciencey stuff got a bit over my head, but not so much that I got bored or didn't want to continue on. It just were brief moments where I was like, you lost me here, and then he did a good job where his characters usually tried to explain things a bit easier for other characters. And that is something that I, as a reader and not an astronomer, really appreciate it. Really interesting apocalyptic novel. And according to other scientists and writers, the outcome of this story is actually not that far from what could actually happen if we had a similar situation happening in real life, which is also quite interesting. I really enjoyed The Black Cloud. It was quite short, and I would have loved to have gotten to know the characters a bit more, but still a really good read. If you're a fan of science fiction, I would recommend you give it a try. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. So there you have it. Those are the books that I've read over the last 2 months. It feels good to be back. It feels good to talk about books. I've also done a lot of thinking about what I want to do here on my channel, and I kind of want to switch it up a bit. I want to do more stuff that is not book related, but I will still do books and all the projects I have with that. I just want to expand a bit and do more things that I love to do, and I want to share it with you guys. So I'm excited about that, and yeah, that's about it for now. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite read over the last 2 months have been. As always, I would love to know. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And I will see you in my next video soon. Goodbye!